This entire film is named after a real man who actually drove across America in just over 53 hours back in 1933. And the director who made this movie had genuinely run that exact same illegal race himself years before he ever picked up a camera. By the end of this video, you'll understand just how little of this story Hollywood actually had to invent. Think about the first time you watched this film, surrounded by your friends, completely convinced there was no way anything this ridiculous had actually happened in real life. Burt Reynolds, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., dressed as a priest. Jackie Chan, years before America fully knew his name. You laughed because it felt like pure Hollywood fantasy. If you remember exactly which part of this film made you laugh hardest as a kid, this channel was built for you. Subscribe before we start. The real Cannonball Baker set the record in 1933. In 1933, a man named Irwin Cannonball Baker drove a Graham Page Blue Streak 8 from New York to Los Angeles in 53 hours and 30 minutes. He later became commissioner of NASCAR. Think about your own father or grandfather possibly knowing that name decades before this film ever existed, because Baker had already been a genuine racing legend long before Hollywood ever borrowed his title. Number 9. The real first run wasn't even a race. It was just 4 guys in a van. The very first real Cannonball run wasn't even a competition. It was simply Brock Yates, his son, an editor, and a friend, driving a Dodge Sportsman van on May 3, 1971, taking 40 hours and 51 minutes. Picture that single van, full of friends with nothing to prove except their own curiosity, accidentally setting in motion the entire idea that would, 10 years later, become a major Hollywood comedy. Stay with us. Because the man who wrote this script wasn't simply researching that real race. He had personally driven the exact same illegal route himself, with his own family hidden in the back of a fake ambulance. Keep going. Number 8. The writer had actually smuggled his own wife cross-country in that ambulance. Yates created the real race specifically as a protest against federal speed limits. He appears in the film's opening as a race official, but had actually run the real Cannonball himself in that exact Dodge ambulance, with his own wife hidden in the back and a fake medical team sitting up front, specifically to cross state lines without getting pulled over. Imagine your own grandfather watching this film, having no idea the screenwriter's actual wife had genuinely ridden across the country in disguise, in the very vehicle now playing for laughs on the screen. Number 7. The director had that exact police run-in. For real. Hal Needham himself had also joined Yates in that real ambulance, and their actual run-in with New Jersey police played out in real life precisely as it does on screen. Think about watching that exact scene as a comedy bit, never knowing the man directing the entire film had genuinely lived through that traffic stop himself, years before he ever called action. Number 6. Burt Reynolds called it one of his worst career decisions. Reynolds was the biggest box office star in the country. In 1980, he didn't need another car movie, but Hal Needham was a friend, and the money was enormous. Reynolds later said it was one of the worst decisions of his career. He barely read the script, didn't rehearse, and treated the shoot like a vacation. Picture your favorite actor of that era, the biggest star alive, essentially treating an entire feature film like a paid holiday with friends, and somehow that approach becoming exactly what made the chaos on screen feel so genuine. Before we keep going, quick question. How old were you the first time you watched this film? And do you remember which celebrity cameo surprised you most? Drop both answers in the comments. We want to know. Number 5. A real crane crushed, a real Cobra, and a real Ferrari. A real $50,000 C Shelby, Cobra, and an $85,000 Ferrari Boxer were both destroyed during production when a camera crane fell directly on top of them. Think about that moment on set. Not a stunt, not a planned wreck for the cameras, but a genuine accident, destroying 2 genuinely valuable cars in a single instant nobody had scripted at all. Number 4. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., were playing real people. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr.'s characters, playing two gambling-obsessed priests, were directly based on a real Cannonball racing team known as the Flying Fathers. This film became the second-to-last film appearance of Dean Martin's entire career. Picture your own parents watching two of the biggest entertainers in America, dressed as priests, having no idea they were essentially playing real people who had actually run this exact illegal race years before the cameras ever showed up. Number 3. The two lead characters weren't invented at all. Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise's characters, J.J. McClure and Victor Prinzi, weren't fictional inventions. They directly represented Hal Needham himself, who had piloted the real Transcon Medivac ambulance, and Brock Yates, the actual inventor of the entire Cannonball Run race. Think about that for a moment. The two heroes you laughed along with for the entire film weren't characters dreamed up on a page. They were simply a director and a writer watching themselves get played back on screen. Number 2. It beat almost everything except the biggest films of the year. Despite Reynolds' own regret, the Cannonball Run earned over $72 million domestically, becoming the 6th highest-grossing film of an extraordinarily competitive year, 1981, finishing behind only Raiders of the Lost Ark, On Golden Pond, Superman 2, Arthur, and Stripes. Picture the biggest star in America, embarrassed by his own performance, watching the box office numbers come in anyway. Proof that sometimes audiences simply don't care how seriously the cast took the material. Number 1. Sometimes chaos wins. Reynolds later reflected on the entire experience with a single line: sometimes chaos wins. Even if the final cut embarrassed him, he admitted that's exactly what had happened. A real race run as a protest against government speed limits by a journalist who hid his own wife inside a real ambulance. A real director who had lived through that exact same police chase years before he ever filmed it. A real Shelby Cobra and a real Ferrari, crushed in an instant by a falling crane nobody had planned for. The biggest star in the world treating the entire production like a vacation he barely paid attention to. And a box office number decades later that proved him completely wrong about what audiences actually wanted. This was never really fiction. It was simply two friends, Brock Yates and Hal Needham, finally getting to put their own real outlaw road trip onto a movie screen, almost 50 years after a man named Cannonball Baker first decided the fastest way across America was simply to go and do it. That is the Cannonball Run. Tell us in the comments, did you know any of this real history before today? And does it change how you'll watch this film next time? Write both answers below. We want to know. Subscribe and hit the bell. We are here every week. We will see you in the next one.